In March 1975, Jim Sullivan, a singer-songwriter from Nebraska, vanished.
Neon dreams once poured out of every honky-tonk on Lower Broadway, yet today, 21 voices hover like blue ghosts over the empty bar stools. These were the daring originals who should have been forever enshrined in jukebox glory. But their stories ended somewhere off the map, somewhere even Google satellites refused to see. Our trail starts on a lonely desert highway outside Santa Rosa, New Mexico, where singer-songwriter Jim Sullivan pulled his Volkswagen off the asphalt in March 1975. His acoustic guitar lay untouched on the back seat, the ignition key still warm. Tracks led into sagebrush, then simply stopped. Search planes circled, but no footprints continued on the other side. Fans blamed an alien taxi service, pointing to his prophetic album U.F.O. Investigators shrugged and wrote the blandest sentence in the English language. No further leads. The sky isn't the only place waiting to swallow dreamers. 12 years earlier, David Box, the fresh-faced Texan drafted to replace Buddy Holly in the Crickets, boarded a tiny Beechcraft bound for Houston. The storm looked mild on radar. Minutes after takeoff, the plane broke apart in a spiral eerily reminiscent of Holly's final plunge. Conspiracy whispers erupted immediately. Wrong parts swapped in, a bent prop, maybe sabotage. Box's mother told reporters the crash report felt pre-written, and old roadies claim an anonymous caller begged them never to mention iced wing surfaces again. Crash folklore grows even darker when you race ahead to Jack Anglin. March 1963 should have been a day of mourning only for Patsy Cline. Anglin was simply speeding toward her funeral on slick Tennessee asphalt. Minutes later, his sedan wrapped itself around a white oak. Highway Patrol called it careless grief, but studio insiders whispered about brake lines, shaved to slivers. One Opry fiddle player still carries a yellowing note Anglin shoved into his breast pocket the night before. "If I can't stand for the truth, I might lie down forever." Stonewall Jackson did not vanish in a flash of metal. He vanished in paperwork. After topping charts with Waterloo, he dared to sue the Grand Ole Opry for age discrimination. The settlement was buried under non-disclosure snow, and Jackson's bookings evaporated overnight. Musicians watching from the rafters swear it was like watching a stage curtain fall and never rise again. One former manager claims Jackson received a single certified letter marked "Return to Sender" every Christmas. No stamp, no address, only a wax seal pressed with a tiny broken guitar. Linda Martell shattered another barrier entirely. In 1970, she became the first black woman to break the top 40 in country music, but her follow-up single mysteriously stalled despite overflowing jukebox requests. Promoters stopped returning calls, and whisper campaigns questioned her commercial fit. Martell retreated to a South Carolina farm, where fans sometimes spotted her singing lullabies to goats at sunrise. When a journalist finally tracked her down, her only comment was, "You can polish glass all you want, it's still see-through." John Black lived an even more abrupt fairy tale. He'll Have to Stay sold 1 million copies in '60, yet by '62 she disappeared from studio rosters entirely. Her sister found a locked trunk in John's attic containing a stack of unopened royalty checks and a single reel-to-reel demo labeled "Too Real for Radio Do Not Play." Nobody has ever dared thread that tape through a machine. Rumor claims it's lyrics name executives who traded rotations for chandeliered favors. Whatever truth sleeps on that spool, it sleeps undisturbed. Bonnie Guitar should have been untouchable, singer, producer, even co-owner of her own label. Still, Nashville's telephone grid went dark around her the moment she started negotiating overseas deals without the usual intermediaries. One afternoon, her office furniture was repossessed in silence, the movers carrying gold records like funeral wreaths. She told a friend, "I've learned every chord on the fretboard except the one that opens locked doors." After that, she walked through a final doorway of her own choosing. Jimmy Orion Ellis wore a sequined mask that let fans believe Elvis still breathed. When Orion was shot behind the counter of his Alabama pawn shop in 1998, detectives noted the angle looked staged, the register left theatrically ajar. 3 patrons swear the body bag looked too short. 2 months later, a blurry street performer in Argentina sang Orion's signature vibrato into a battered mic. Was it a hoax, or did a man who built a livelihood on borrowed identity finally reclaim a life by disappearing inside a legend? Johnny Western knew better than masks. After penning The Ballad of Paladin, he was primed for decades of cowboy glory. Then he abruptly vanished into radio silence. Years later, a redacted bureau document surfaced, hinting that Western had provided morale-boosting services for overseas intelligence ops. A retired prop master remembers seeing Western in Bangkok, hair cropped, voice hushed. When asked about his guitar, he lifted a briefcase and said, "My chords got classified." Larry John Wilson made the reverse journey. His baritone could quake whiskey glasses, yet one night in Macon, he laid the guitar on stage mid-song and walked out the back door. A decade later, a documentary crew found him in a Georgia high school, teaching shy teenagers how to breathe through their diaphragms. He explained his disappearance by tapping the chalkboard. Fame pays in applause. Quiet pays in sunrise. That line landed on the cutting room floor after distributors demanded more drama, proving Wilson's point. Molly B's teenage stardom exploded alongside Elvis tours, but after a string of tabloid headlines involving late-night parties and rumored coke binges, she evaporated. She resurfaced years later in a Reno lounge, performing novelty tunes between comedy sets, smiling through a tremor she blamed on doctor-prescribed nerves pills. The glitter crowd drifted past, unaware they were listening to a former chart sensation who once sparked riots with a wink. Rusty Draper sold millions worldwide, yet American promoters forgot him between one tour and the next. He later confided to his barber that a secret clause in a network contract barred him from U.S. television for stylistic redundancy, a term nobody could define but everybody obeyed. Draper spent his final seasons headlining cruise ships where no cameras rolled, telling passengers, "I'm popcorn in a world that switched to kettle corn." Stone-cold industry exile took different form for Tom Paul Glazer. The outlaw movement's third musketeer alongside Waylon and Willie broke too many unspoken rules about publishing splits. One morning he boarded up his Nashville studio, pinned a note to the door, gone to tend quieter cattle, and retreated to a Nebraska ranch rumored to sit on native burial ground. Tourists occasionally report hearing harmonicas drift across the prairie at dusk, but the ranch gates stay chained. Jimmy Wages should have shared rockabilly glory with Elvis. Instead, Sun Records shelved his sessions without explanation. Wages accepted a factory job and spoke of Memphis only once, telling a co-worker, "Some songs ain't meant for daylight, they catch fire." When collectors finally pressed his unreleased sides decades later, the tracks hissed like smothered coals, as if the acetate itself resented resurrection. Alva Dion Coker's disappearance began on a Greyhound platform. Booked for a Midwest radio tour, she never arrived. Fellow passengers remember her speaking softly with a woman carrying a medical cooler. Investigators dismissed it as harmless small talk. Family members received unsigned postcards from Colorado spas describing mountain air miracle treatments, but no clinic admitted her. Some believe illness stole her. Others say she staged martyrdom to escape sibling comparisons. Bobby Austin penned apartment number 9 inches for Tammy Wynette, then pulled his own name from every marquee. Close friends recount a night when Austin, fresh from a cryptic hospital stay involving unexplained injections, burned his stage clothes in a backyard barrel and whispered, "Songs are rental properties. I'm tired of paying emotional rent." The ashes floated upward like gray butterflies, and by dawn, he was gone. Slim Whitman presents the strangest duality of all. In Britain, he outsold the Beatles at one point, yet American reporters treated him like a rumor. He spent long stretches cruising international waters on freighters, serenading winches and gulls. Customs manifests list him as audio consultant, a phantom title that let him bypass standard immigration logs. At home, only late-night infomercials revived his voice, hawking compilation CDs while the man himself lounged unseen beyond the horizon. Don Chappell, Tammy Wynette's first husband, vanished after their bitter split, leaving behind a notebook scrawled with chord charts and courtroom sketches showing Wynette testifying against a silhouette. Nashville police logged him as presumed relocated. One anonymous phone call to a local DJ claimed Chappell joined a traveling revival tent, preaching sermons about forgiveness to empty cornfields. The DJ kept the tape but never aired it. The static between words felt like breathing. David Rogers enjoyed a string of 70s hits and then evaporated. His drummer insists Rogers walked off a stage in Jacksonville, pocketed the cash payment, and muttered, "I'm cashing in my frequent heartbreak miles." The drummer thought it was a joke until the gig bus idled the next morning without him. Some say Rogers lives under an alias in the Florida Panhandle, owning a bait shop that refuses to stock hooks. Margie Singleton's torch duets with George Jones ruled juke joints, yet by 1968 her chart presence dimmed. Industry rumor chalked it up to changing tastes, but Singleton privately told a cousin she'd been warned to surrender writer credits to a publisher with sticky mob connections. She chose Exile over extortion, relocating to a town whose post office no longer exists. Each Christmas, unsigned greeting cards arrive at country radio stations containing handwritten lyrics no one can place. Billy Lee Riley, the rockabilly wildcat behind Red Hot, tasted a late-life comeback before sliding again into obscurity. Hospital records show multiple admissions for diabetes complications treated in the charity ward despite his legendary reputation. Nurses remember Riley playing harmonica in the hallway at midnight, telling anyone who listened, "A tune can outlive the man, but the man still feels the overdue rent." When he passed, a missing footnote in the obituary read, "Estate value, $4.19. 4 decades of investigative gossip swirl like wildfire through taverns and fan forums, yet patterns emerge if you sift slow enough. Roughly half our wanderers challenged contracts just before they dissolved into rumor. Another handful flirted with substances the Nashville grapevine codes as white rails or green curls, shorthand for powders and leaves executives pretended not to notice until the marketing math sagged. Several held secrets larger than any backstage indulgence. Whispers about offshore accounts, private detectives, even coded letters slipped into safe deposit boxes scattered from Tulsa to Tijuana. One veteran publicist once mapped the disappearances on a corkboard, red strings stretching from New Mexico mesas to Memphis alleys to Scottish folk festivals where Slim Whitman still sold out halls long after American radio forgot him. She noticed clusters around pivotal industry years: 1964, the British invasion; 1973, the payola hearings; 1980, the dawn of corporate country packaging. Each cluster coincided with new market rollouts that required clearing shelf space for fresher faces, and nothing clears a shelf faster than a vanished artist nobody dares book. Families search longest after the headlines fade. Every January, Margie Singleton's niece drives the Natchez Trace, stopping at shrines of roadside folklore, leaving fresh magnolias beneath missing person flyers so sun-faded the ink resembles old bruises. Don Chappell's grandnephew has a Google alert for tent revivals in counties nobody can pronounce. Whenever a sermon features a remorseful songwriter, he hits the highway with a cassette recorder and the whisper of hope. A podcaster recently logged 36 possible Jimmy Wages sightings, each debunked, but the message board still pings at midnight. For internet detectives, grainy frame grabs and archived concert posters become tarot cards. One forum claims to have matched voice print fragments from a 2019 Georgia karaoke contest to Jimmy Wages' Lost Son Masters with 98% certainty. Another thread insists that a cracked black and white photograph of a Missouri County fair clown shows Molly B beneath the grease paint, citing the curve of her left cheek as proof. Crowdsourced DNA projects beg relatives for cheek swabs, trying to connect cemetery remains to stage names etched in forgotten contracts. Behind the curtain, aging producers occasionally open locked drawers after 3 whiskeys too many. They flip through memos stamped confidential, Stonewall Jackson settlement figures, Linda Martell radio blacklists, expense reports that list special outreach to ensure narrative compliance. The drinking buddy listens, tape rolling in a coat pocket. But even that evidence sits in legal limbo because every witness fears spending retirement defending defamation suits. One junior lawyer who once threatened to leak documents found his house foreclosed within a month and his name erased from firm records like chalk under rain. Meanwhile, fans romanticize the absences. They upload guitar covers of unreleased tracks, splice Jim Sullivan's cosmic lyrics onto drone footage of New Mexico starlight, and theorize that these artists levitated into the heavens rather than faced mundane betrayals. The myth is gentler than the math of royalties and medical debt. Nashville gift shops sell postcards reading, "Wish you were still here," with silhouettes of every missing singer twanging beneath a crescent moon. Tourists mail them home, never realizing the silhouettes are traced from police sketches, not publicity photos. If any of our 21 travelers are still out there, maybe they watch these amateur documentaries on battered televisions, laughing at the wild theories, tipping baseball caps low whenever the camera pans across an old press photo. Perhaps they find comfort in knowing their silence has become its own melody, a minor key buried inside modern playlists, flickering like tube-amp feedback whenever the algorithm shuffles to something too perfect. Or maybe the vanishings were never voluntary and what survives on vinyl are coded distress calls we never learned to translate. Either way, the jukebox still spins, and every vanished slot is a selection button jammed with gum, forever silent until someone pries it loose. Press play on Jim Sullivan's Highways, and you can almost hear desert wind where drums should be. Cue Jean Black's lone hit and imagine the unheard sequel she locked away. Let the old records crackle because the crackle is where the ghosts slip through. After all, music history isn't a museum. It's a Polaroid left on a dashboard, colors bleaching under relentless daylight. Tonight you've walked the length of that dashboard photograph, tracing outlines of stars the industry tried to erase. If their voices spoke to you, share this story with the friend who thinks every mystery has been solved by screen glow and satellites. Ask them which disappearance feels like unfinished business, which string on the board they'd tug first. Drop a comment explaining whether you believe in sabotage, alien taxis, or the quieter conspiracy of corporate rebranding, and if you've got a family tale about a cousin who once jammed with a chart ghost in a roadside bar, the microphone is yours. Before you click away, remember one last truth. The neon lights never truly switch off on Lower Broadway. They hum at 4 in the morning, waiting for footsteps, waiting for a chord nobody remembers until someone plays it in the exact moment the night surrenders to dawn. Somewhere out there, a runaway chord still vibrates in an empty air shaft under the Ryman, looking for the hand that struck it. Maybe that hand belongs to one of our missing 21. Maybe it belongs to you, replaying this video, keeping the crackle alive until the encore. So while the sunrise inches across the Cumberland and the alleys behind the clubs fill with delivery trucks, imagine what could happen if even one of those silhouettes stepped back into the glow. Picture a surprise walk-on at the Bluebird. The crowd hushes, thumbs freeze above record buttons, a weathered baritone clears the dust off a chord progression everyone thought belonged to the past, and the entire room realizes it is witnessing a living correction to the ledger of music history. What critics would brand a nostalgic gimmick would, in that instant, feel like the universe fixing a typo nobody noticed until now. Maybe that is why fans keep scouring flea markets for misprinted 45s, why they rewind bootleg cassettes until the tape warps, why they swear the busker on Printer's Alley sounds exactly like a name long carved on a granite headstone. Hope is a catchy chorus. It loops until belief feels like memory. The industry might file these stories under myth management, but ordinary listeners store them deeper, in the pocket where you'd normally keep a lucky guitar pick or a wrinkled set list nabbed from a stage floor before security spotted you. So the next time you tap the touch screen on a digital jukebox, linger on the search bar. Type one of these lost names. If nothing pops up, don't shrug. Ask the manager why a catalog built on nostalgia can't spare 3 minutes for a mystery. Ask your favorite playlist curator where Orion's B-side disappeared. Agitate politely. Algorithms only learn when we nudge them. Because every hidden track you revive is another candle in the dark hall where these 21 voices still rehearse, waiting for an ovation that never came. Mention it on social feeds, in comment threads, at family reunions where an uncle once played pedal steel. The louder the collective whisper, the harder it becomes for commerce to keep legends firmly padlocked.